Chapter 1. The Cold Outside. The storm howled like a living creature across the mountain ridges of Dathra, where 3 moons bled pale light through churning clouds. The wind tore down icy slopes, carrying the scent of iron and frostbite, and it clawed at the fragile figure stumbling along a narrow path. Leora's limbs trembled violently, her scaled skin a dull violet under the lash of the cold. Each breath left her throat in a ragged hiss, condensing into glittering mist before being torn away. She wrapped her arms tight around herself, but the ceremonial cloak the council had left her with was no more protection than paper. Her people had called it honor in exile. She knew it for what it was, death dressed in tradition. Her knees buckled, sending her crashing against a snow-dusted outcropping of black stone. She forced herself up, blinking against the sting of frozen tears, and squinted through the blizzard. A shape, small, angular, utterly alien to this wilderness, emerged from the veil of snow. A hut, a crude structure of synth wood and alloy, half buried in drifts, its faint blue light glowing like a star in the storm. Leora staggered toward it. Each step felt like a battle against the gravity of despair. She reached the door and pressed her palm weakly against the panel. No response. Her strength gave way. She slid down against the metal frame, shivering, the cold stealing the last of her will. Then the door hissed open. Warmth spilled out, real warmth, tinged with the scent of burning fuel and something richer, savory. A tall figure stood framed in the light, broad-shouldered, wrapped in a patched survival jacket that looked rough compared to the elegant weaves of her people. A human, stars above. His voice was gravel and warmth all at once. "You'll freeze to death out there." He didn't hesitate. Strong hands reached down, pulling her into the hut with surprising gentleness. The door sealed shut, muting the storm into a dull roar. Inside, a crude fire crackled within a heat converter, casting amber light against metal walls. A kettle hissed softly on a makeshift grill. Leora blinked rapidly, her eyes adjusting to the sudden glow. She tried to speak, but managed only a rasping croak. "Don't waste your breath." The man guided her to a bench near the fire. His movements were practiced, efficient, yet his eyes held something unfamiliar to her. Concern without calculation. "Here, sit. You're safe." Her claws flexed weakly. Safe? No one had ever said that to her, without condition. She watched as he unfastened a thermal blanket from his pack and draped it around her shoulders. The warmth bit into her frozen skin, almost painful in its kindness. "Who are you?" she finally whispered, her voice broken but laced with suspicion. "Name's Elias Ward. Explorer. Sometimes mercenary. Full-time stubborn bastard." He gave a crooked grin, setting a steaming cup of something dark and bitter-smelling in her hands. "And you?" She hesitated, staring into liquid, its strange aroma flooding her senses. Humans drank this? Bitter warmth that stung her tongue, yet melted the ice in her chest. "Leora," she murmured, almost ashamed to claim the name of someone already dead to her people. Elias crouched down to meet her eyes, his expression steady. "Well, Leora, looks like tonight you're not dying in the snow." Something in his tone, so matter-of-fact, so utterly human, struck her harder than the storm ever could. Her people had abandoned her as weak. This stranger, this human, didn't even ask why. He simply decided her life was worth saving. For the first time since her exile, Leora felt the faint, flickering ember of hope. Chapter 2. Fire and Questions. The storm outside clawed at the hut like some great beast, its howls muted by the alloy walls. Inside, the air thrummed with quiet warmth. The soft crackle of the heat converter, the hiss of the kettle, and the faint hum of a portable generator tucked into the corner. Leora sat stiffly on the bench, cocooned in the human's thermal blanket. Her body still shook in aftershock from the cold, but it was something deeper that made her tremble now, shame. Exile was meant to strip her of dignity. Yet here she was, breathing only because of the man from a race her people mocked as reckless firewalkers of the stars. Elias moved with a kind of unhurried precision, rummaging through a weathered survival pack. He laid out supplies, gauze rolls, a slender tube of sealant foam, ration bars, human tools. Simple, inelegant, almost primitive compared to the sleek medkits of her people. And yet, when he crouched before her and gently took her hand, his touch was steady, sure. "Your fingers," he muttered, examining the raw edges where frostbite had already kissed the tips. "You waited too long." Leora tried to pull back, but he tightened his grip, not cruelly, but firmly, like a man unwilling to lose what he held. She hissed through her teeth as he applied the sealant, warmth spreading through her veins as the foam triggered circulation. "You do this for everyone?" she asked, her voice sharp, testing. "Even strangers?" Elias gave a short laugh, more breath than sound. "Strangers are just friends you haven't had a drink with yet." Besides, his gaze flicked to hers, steady, unflinching. What kind of man leaves someone to die outside his door? Her chest tightened. "My people would." The words almost slipped from her lips. She swallowed them back, bitterness burning hotter than the fire. "You don't even know who I am," she whispered. "I know enough," Elias replied, wrapping gauze around her hand with deliberate care. "You're freezing, half-starved, and too damn proud to admit you need help." His grin tugged at one corner of his mouth. "Reminds me of my little sister." The mention of family jolted Leora. Among her people, exile erased all ties. Her name was stricken, her bloodline severed. To hear him speak of family so casually, as though it were an anchor instead of a weapon, unsettled her more than the cold ever had. "What do humans cling to?" she asked suddenly. The question tumbled out unbidden, raw with need. "When everything else is taken?" Elias leaned back on his heels, thoughtful, the firelight carved lines of exhaustion and quiet defiance into his face. "We cling to each other," he said simply, "even when it hurts, even when it makes no sense." Leora's breath caught. The words felt heavy, weighted with something she could not name. Her people clung to tradition, to law, to the brutal machinery of survival. But each law had been a blade turned against her. Each tradition had cut her free from belonging. She studied Elias, the coarse jacket patch at the elbows, the scar across his jaw, the eyes that carried storms of their own. He was not elegant. He was not refined. But in his presence, she felt the strange, alien warmth of being seen. Her stomach growled, breaking the silence. Elias smirked, tossing her a ration bar. The wrapper crinkled under her claws. She sniffed it cautiously, sweet, dense, utterly foreign. "It's food," he reassured her. "Might not taste like much, but it'll keep you alive." Leora bit into it, grimacing at the gritty sweetness, but the heat that bloomed in her chest was undeniable. Life, sustenance, given freely. Elias leaned back against the wall, watching the fire. "Tomorrow, when the storm clears, we'll head down the pass. There's a way station in the valley, safer than freezing up here." Her eyes narrowed. "Why?" He looked at her, puzzled. "Why what? Why help me?" "My people wouldn't." His expression hardened, but not with anger, with conviction. "Then maybe that's why they're losing ground to the rest of us. Because humans," he tapped a finger against his chest, "we don't abandon people. Not if we can help it." The storm growled outside, but inside the hut, silence stretched between them, thick and alive. Leora stared into the fire, her mind racing. Humans were supposed to be fragile dreamers. Yet this Elias, was rewriting everything she thought she knew. And for the first time, she felt a sliver of fear not for her death, but for the possibility of hope. Chapter 3, Shadows of Betrayal. By dawn, the storm had quieted. The moons faded behind thinning clouds, and pale shafts of light bled across the jagged peaks. Frost clung to the hut's windows, but inside, warmth lingered. Elias adjusted the straps of his pack, methodical as ever. His boots thudded softly against the alloy floor, each sound a reminder that he was already thinking 2 steps ahead. Leora sat by the fire, the blanket still draped around her shoulders, though her posture was taut, coiled, like a predator unsure if it had been cornered or spared. Storms eased. Elias said, tugging the last strap secure, "We can make the valley by dusk if we don't dawdle." Leora's gaze didn't leave the flames. "You speak as if I still have somewhere to go." Elias paused, studying her. "Everyone's got somewhere. Just depends how far you're willing to walk." Her throat tightened. Walk? To what? Back into a world that spat her out? The words swirled bitter on her tongue until they spilled, ragged and sharp. "They left me to die, Elias." He turned, brow furrowed. "My people," she continued, forcing herself to meet his gaze. Her voice quavered, but anger anchored it. "They call it exile. A ritual. They say the weak must be cast out, so the strong remain. But it was more than that." Her claws dug into the blanket, tearing faint grooves in the fabric. "They wanted me silenced, because I saw what I wasn't meant to see." Elias crouched by her, his expression unreadable but steady. "What did you see?" Leora hesitated. The memories a storm of their own. A council chamber of black stone, the glow of crystalline archives, the whispered plans, thick with rot, that slipped from the mouths of leaders sworn to protect their people. "They trade lives," she said finally, her voice low, as if the shadows themselves might be listening. "Slaves taken from fringe colonies, sold to the syndicate, hidden under the guise of resource exchange. I found records in the archives. I confronted them." Her breath hitched, and they branded me a liar, a traitor. Elias's jaw tightened, the firelight carving hard edges into his face. For a long moment, silence stretched, thick, heavy, dangerous. Then he said, softly but with steel, "So they tried to bury the truth. By burying you." Leora's eyes flickered with something between rage and despair. "And they will succeed, unless I freeze here or starve in some gutter. My voice means nothing." Elias leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees, eyes never leaving hers. "You're wrong." She blinked, startled by the blunt certainty in his tone. "Back home," he continued, "we've got a saying, the truth's a fire. You can smother it, drown it, even try to stomp it out, but sooner or later it burns through." His hand gestured vaguely toward the horizon. "Your council thinks they're untouchable. But if you've got proof, if you've got the courage to face them again, well, that's where I come in." Her brow furrowed. "You? One human against the council?" He grinned faintly. "Not the first stacked deck I've played against. Thing is, humans don't always win by strength. We win by stubbornness, by refusing to stay down when someone says we should." Leora's chest tightened. She searched his face, trying to understand the species that her people dismissed as reckless dreamers. Yet here he was, offering not pity, but resolve. "You would risk yourself," she murmured. "For me? For a truth that isn't even yours." Elias rose to his feet, slinging the pack over his shoulder. "Truth doesn't belong to one species, and I don't like bullies." For the first time in days, something like a smile tugged at Leora's lips. Fragile, fleeting, but real. Outside, the wind had stilled. The world was quiet, holding its breath. And for the first time since her exile, she wasn't walking into death alone. Chapter 4, Neon and Steel. The descent into the valley was brutal. The path twisted down sheer cliffs where the snow gave way to black stones slick with mist. By the time Elias and Leora reached the lower slopes, the storm had dissolved into a pale haze, and the land below stretched out like something from another world, alive with light. Leora drew her cloak tighter as she stared. The cliff city of Eros clung to the canyon walls like a hive of crystal and metal, its structures carved into stone and laced with luminous veins of energy. Bridges arched between towers, glowing with bioluminescent threads. Hovercraft hummed along vertical lanes, leaving trails of neon green and violet. From the valley floor, pillars of steam rose from geothermal vents, painting the air with shifting veils of white. Elias whistled low. Well, beats the hell out of any mining colony I have been to. To him, it was chaos and wonder wrapped together. To Leora, it was memory and fear. This city was not sanctuary. It was the heart of the very culture that had discarded her. Cloaked and hunched, she kept her head down as they approached the gates carved into the cliff's base. Inside, the air changed. It was thicker, carrying a sense of roasted fungi, engine grease, and the sharp tang of ozone from energy lines humming above. Voices layered together in 1,000 dialects. Stalls overflowed with alien wares. Fruits that pulsed faintly like beating hearts. Fabrics woven with shimmering threads that shifted color with every angle. Weapons forged from alloys that drank delight. Elias strode through it all as if he'd been born to it, eyes wide with boyish curiosity. He stopped at a food stand where a vendor roasted skewers of something that sizzled with glowing blue oil. "What is that?" Elias asked, grinning. The vendor hissed in annoyance, mandibles clicking. "Growth, not for outworld stomachs." Stomach's tougher than it looks," Elias said, tossing a few credits across the counter. He bit into the skewer, grimaced, then forced a swallow. "All right, maybe not my best call." He coughed, eyes watering, then laughed. "But worth trying once." Leora tugged at his sleeve, whispering sharply, "You cannot draw attention here." He turned to her, still grinning through the burn. "Relax. Blend in by standing out. Works every time." But his levity collapsed in an instant when a group of armored sentries moved past, their black helms reflecting the market lights. Leora froze, clutching the edge of her cloak. One helmet tilted slightly toward her. Elias's hand slipped casually to the small of her back, guiding her into the press of bodies. "Keep walking," he murmured, voice low. "Don't run. Eyes ahead." Her heart thundered, breath shallow. The crowd seemed to close in, voices a cacophony. Then she stumbled. Elias caught her, steadying her with an arm strong around her waist. For one brief moment, their eyes met his calm, hers panicked. "Breathe," he whispered. "They're gone." And they were. The guards passed without pause, swallowed by the market. Leora exhaled, realizing how tightly she'd clung to him. She released her grip, stepping back, shame burning her cheeks. "You do not understand," she hissed softly. "If they recognize me, if they suspect, they will drag me before the council. Then we'll be ready," Elias said. No hesitation, no doubt, just that human certainty, maddening in its simplicity. As they wound deeper into the city, the crowds thinned. The neon haze gave way to towering spires of polished stone, the wealthier tiers where the council chambers loomed. Here, silence reigned, broken only by the hum of transport lifts sliding up vertical tracks. Leora shivered, not from cold, but from memory. Yet as her fear grew, so did something else. Each time her steps faltered, Elias's steady presence pulled her forward. He didn't treat her as fragile. He didn't flinch at her fear. To him, survival wasn't solitude. It was shared burden. And when shadows moved in a side alley, 3 figures stepping out with blades gleaming faintly in the neon glow. Leora acted before thought. One lunge at Elias. She tore the cloak free, striking with claws that slashed sparks from steel. The attacker staggered back. Hissing, Elias pivoted, fist snapping forward a crack against the jaw. The third slashed, but Leora intercepted, their blades clashing. The fight was fast, brutal, and messy, but when the attackers fled into shadows, panting and bleeding, Elias grinned at her with blood on his knuckles. "Not bad," he said, nodding at her. Her chest heaved, adrenaline burning through fear. She hadn't fought for herself. She'd fought for him. And when his grin softened into something warmer, she realized. He knew it too. For the first time since her exile, Leora didn't feel like prey. Standing beside Elias, under the neon haze of Veros, she felt like someone who could fight back. Sparkles, this chapter brings him into the alien heartland with sensory detail, highlights the cultural contrast, his curiosity versus her fear, and deepens their bond through danger. It also shows Elias's human stubbornness and adaptability, which keeps startling Leora. Would you like me to expand Chapter 5, the trial of truth, next, with the tense council chamber confrontation? Chapter 5, the trial of truth. The council chamber loomed like a cathedral carved into the living rock of Veros. Massive stone pillars, veined with glowing crystal, reached into shadowed heights where banners of the ruling houses swayed in the artificial wind. The floor was polished obsidian, reflecting the shifting light of suspended orbs. Leora's steps faltered as she entered, her hood lowered at Elias's urging. This was the place she had been condemned, the hall where her name was erased. Whispers rippled across the chamber as the sentries escorted them forward. Cloaked figures of the council sat on elevated thrones in a semicircle, their eyes gleaming cold above ornate masks. At the center, High Counselor Vaethra leaned forward, his voice a hiss carried on the chamber's amplifiers. The exile returns. His gaze cut to Leora like a blade, dragged in by an off-world vagrant. Elias smirked, his voice carrying an irreverent ease that defied the chamber's oppressive weight. "Nice to meet you, too. Though for the record, I wasn't dragging anyone. She walks just fine." Gasps rippled from the onlookers. Insolence here was unheard of. Yet Elias stood as if the chamber were a tavern, and the council merely patrons too self-important for their own good. Leora's heart pounded, her claws flexing against her palms. The council's contempt was a familiar blade, but Elias's presence steadied her. He didn't bow. He didn't tremble. He simply existed, as if their power meant nothing. "You dare mock us?" Vaethra's voice thundered. Elias shrugged. "I've faced syndicate warlords with sharper teeth. You want mockery, you'll have to earn it." He reached into his jacket, ignoring the guards tensing at the motion, and pulled free a battered datapad. Its screen flickered to life, displaying the crystalline records Leora had uncovered. The proof of the council's dealings. "Funny thing about lies," Elias said, holding the datapad aloft. "They're hard to hide when someone bothers to look on the floorboards. Smuggling manifests, transaction logs, names." He jabbed the air with a finger. "Your names." The chamber erupted in hisses and gasps. Counselors shifted uneasily, their masks suddenly shields rather than symbols. Vaethra rose, his robe snapping with the movement. "This is fabrication. A human's trick." Elias's grin sharpened. "If it's a trick, then explain why your security archives match the data. When I cross-checked. Took me one long night and a stubborn streak. Humans don't quit easy." All eyes turned to Leora. Her pulse thundered in her ears. This was her moment. Her voice, stripped from her, now hers to reclaim. She stepped forward, casting aside the human's blanket, standing tall despite the tremor in her limbs. "They called me traitor because I would not be silent," she said, her voice rising against the chamber's walls. "But the traitors sit here, cloaked in power, selling our people's blood for profit. Look at the records. Look at their fear. Truth burns through every lie. Her words struck like sparks. Murmurs swelled into shouts among the gathered clans. Some cried for proof, others for justice. The chamber boiled with unrest, the council's authority fracturing under the weight of exposure. Guards moved forward, weapons half drawn, but Elias stepped in front of Leora. His stance defiant, a wall of flesh and bone against armored steel. Careful, he warned, his voice low but carrying. The crowd's not with you anymore. And it was true. From the balconies above, voices rose, not in support of the council, but in challenge. The tide was turning. Vaethra's mask cracked in fury. Remove them. But hesitation rippled through the guards. Fear, uncertainty. The kind of hesitation born when lies meet daylight. Leora's claws dug into her palms as she lifted her chin. For the first time, she did not see herself as a victim cast out in the snow. She saw herself as a spark, an Elias, the storm that shielded it until it could ignite. The council's roar drowned in the crowd's swelling voices. The truth had taken root. Chapter 6. A New Fire. The chamber of the council fractured into chaos. Cries echoed from the balconies, banners torn from their poles, voices rising in fury and hope alike. The guards who once marched in perfect order now faltered, some lowering their weapons, others backing toward the shadows. For the first time in living memory, the chamber's silence, so carefully cultivated as a symbol of power, was broken by the roar of the people. Leora stood in the storm of voices, her chest heaving. The data pad still glowed in Elias's hand, its pale light cutting through the chamber like a beacon. Vaethra barked commands, his mask slipping askew, his words drowned by the chorus of outrage. Elias leaned closer, his voice pitched low against the din. Time to go before they remember how to aim those shiny sticks. Leora tore her gaze from the crumbling council and met his eyes. There was no fear in them, only that reckless, stubborn spark she had come to know. She nodded once, a warrior's nod, and together they strode out as the chamber collapsed into uproar. Why nightfall? They had reached the upper tiers of the city, far above the turmoil below. The spires stretched into the sky, their crystalline veins pulsing with alien light. From a balcony overlooking the canyon, they watched as a glow of protest fires spread like constellations across the valley floor. "It has begun," Leora whispered. Her voice carried both awe and dread. "They will not forgive me. Even with the truth laid bare, I am still the exile." Elias leaned on the balcony rail, his patched jacket dusted with soot from their escape. "Then don't go back to them." He turned, his grin softened by something gentler. "You've already got a place. If you want it." She studied him, this human who refused to bow to fear or tradition. "Among your kind?" she asked, her tone fragile, as if testing the shape of the thought. "Among anyone who knows the value of loyalty," he replied. His gaze met hers, steady and unflinching. "That's what humans do. We make family where there wasn't any before." For a long moment, Leora could not speak. Her people had cast her into the snow to die. Yet here was a man from a race dismissed as reckless dreamers, offering her something she had never been given. Belonging. The wind shifted, carrying the scent of ozone and smoke from the valley below. Leora stepped closer, her claws brushing the rough fabric of his sleeve. "You are a strange people," she murmured. "Fragile, stubborn, foolish." Her voice trembled, but her eyes shone with something new. "And yet, perhaps that is strength." Elias chuckled softly. "You're starting to get it." Silence settled between them. But it was not heavy. It was alive, threaded with a hum of distant engines from ships lifting off into the star-laced sky. For the first time since her exile, Leora did not feel the cold. She felt warmth, a fire lit not by tradition or duty, but by choice. Elias extended a hand. Come with me. My ship's nothing fancy, but it's got room for someone who knows how to claw a mercenary in the face." A smile ghosted across her lips. She placed her hand in his, her scales cool against his callous skin. Together, they turned from the city's fractured towers toward the launch platforms where the stars awaited. The hum of engines replaced the howl of the storm. The cabin of Elias's ship glowed with soft amber light, the smell of machine oil and scorched circuits oddly comforting. Leora sat by the viewport, watching as the neon skyline of Veros shrank beneath them, replaced by the endless sprawl of constellations. She thought of the mountain hut, of shivering against the door, abandoned and forgotten, and then of Elias opening it, as if it had never occurred to him to leave her outside. Her fate had been sealed that night by exile, changed forever by a human's refusal to walk away. "Where to?" she asked softly, eyes fixed on the stars. Elias slid into the pilot's chair, flipping switches that filled the ship with a rising hum. "Wherever the truth takes us. Wherever you want." And for the first time, Leora let herself believe in a future not written by others, but forged alongside someone who burned like fire in the cold. The starship's engines purred, a steady hum that resonated to the hull like a heartbeat. Beyond the viewport stretched an ocean of stars, constellations glittering against the black, their light fractured by the faint sheen of a nebula drifting in violet hues. Far below, the neon skyline of Veros burned against the canyon walls, its fires of protest now embers in the night. Leora sat at the co-pilot's chair, her reflection a ghost in the glass. For so long she had been in exile, her name erased, her voice silenced. Yet here, wrapped in the ship's soft amber glow, the faint tug of artificial gravity anchoring her, she felt reborn. Elias leaned back in the pilot's seat, one hand steady on the console, the other reaching toward her. His smile was tired but unyielding. "Told you," he said quietly. "Truth always burns through." Her claws brushed his fingers, hesitant, then curled into his palm. Warmth spread through her chest, stronger than any fire. "And humans," she whispered, voice breaking into a tremor that was equal parts fear and wonder. "You never let go, even when the galaxy tells you to." He turned to her fully, eyes reflecting starlight. "That's our curse," he said, squeezing her hand, "and our gift." Together, they gazed into the endless night. Two exiles, one by decree, one by choice, finding not just survival, but belonging. The ship tilted upward, thrusters igniting, and the stars opened before them. For the first time, Leora didn't feel like she was running from the past. She was flying toward a future.